I should have looked away when she stepped into the room, but my eyes didn't even try to pretend. There was something about the way she closed the door behind her, quiet, controlled, like she was sealing us into something neither of us had agreed to say out loud. Her name tag caught the light when she turned, Elena. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled into a low twist, a few soft strands framing her face like they'd slipped free on purpose. Her scrub top fit in a way that made it hard to tell if it was meant to be professional or just happened to respect every line of her body. I was supposed to be here for something routine. A pulled muscle in my back from the gym. Nothing serious. Nothing that should have made my pulse pick up when she stepped closer. But her presence had weight, as if she'd been here for more than a few seconds, like she already knew the air she was about to change. "Lie back," she said, and her voice wasn't loud, but it landed low, like she knew I'd listen before I thought about it. I leaned against the paper-lined exam table, but she didn't move away after guiding me down. She stood near the edge, closer than necessary, her arm brushing mine for a second too long before she reached for the chart behind me. I caught the faint scent of something that didn't belong in a hospital, vanilla, warm, like the kind you remember from someone's kitchen, not a sterile hallway. "You're tense," she said, but she wasn't looking at the notes. She was looking at me. I tried to breathe evenly. "Back injury'll do that to you." Her lips curved, not a smile, more like she'd been holding one quietly. Or something else will." She placed the stethoscope against my chest, but her fingers rested there longer than necessary, light and deliberate, as if she could feel more than just breath or heartbeat. Her hand brushed the side of my ribs as she adjusted the earpieces. Not accidental. Not careless. But not reckless either. She held herself with the kind of self-possession you only get when you've spent years pretending not to notice things you actually do. Her eyes flicked up to mine when she said, "Breathe in," and I forgot how. I inhaled too slowly, and her gaze didn't leave me. She didn't tell me to relax. She didn't tell me I was doing fine. She just listened, really listened, to something under my skin, like the sound of it mattered. When she moved behind me to check my back, I felt the heat of her body lean in. Her hand rested on my shoulder, only meant to steady me, but it anchored something else instead. The paper beneath me crackled when I exhaled, like it knew we were both pretending not to notice. "Tell me where it hurts," she murmured. Her breath skimmed the back of my neck. My voice came out lower than I meant. "Depends." She paused. I felt rather than saw her reaction. Her hand drifted along the line of my spine, fingertips grazing, searching, not rushed, not clinical. Her thumb pressed lightly into the muscle just below my shoulder blade, and I tensed harder on instinct. "Here?" she asked, but the question wasn't really about pain. "Something like that." She didn't pull away right away. Her touch lingered, then softened, like she was memorizing without meaning to. When she finally stepped back, the absence of her felt sharper than the contact had. I expected her to turn away, change the subject, reset the tone. She didn't. She walked around to my side again, close enough that her hip brushed the edge of the table. Her sleeve slid against my arm when she reached over me to adjust the light above. "You're holding back," she said quietly, not accusing, just certain. I looked at her then, really looked. There was something unguarded in her expression, the kind of softness you only catch in someone who's spent years keeping it buried. Her hand rested lightly on the table beside me, fingers splayed, her thumb close enough to touch. Before I could answer, the door handle clicked. Her head turned, but her hand didn't move. The sound froze between us, suspended like the breath we both forgot to take. The door didn't open. Someone must have walked past and changed their mind, but the handle clicking left a silence behind it that felt louder than footsteps. She didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. Her hand was still on the table, just a few inches from where mine rested, and it felt like moving away would have said too much. Elena finally stepped back, but not far. She adjusted the cuff of her sleeve like she needed her hands busy. I sat up slowly, and the exam paper stuck to my back before tearing loose with a soft rip. The sound made her glance at me again, and for a second, there was something like apology in her expression. Apology for, what? Letting the moment happen? Almost not stopping it? She cleared her throat. You mentioned you hurt yourself at the gym. You train often? I nodded. Helps keep my head clear. That landed somewhere in her. Something in the way her shoulders eased told me she understood more than she let on. She hesitated, then leaned against the counter near the sink, crossing her arms, not to close herself off, but to hold something in. I used to go in the mornings, she said. Before work. Then I stopped. Why? She gave a shallow smile, the kind that covers something real. Life gets louder as you get older. Some things fall through the cracks and don't climb back out. Divorce. Loss. Disappointment. The words hung there even though she never said them. I could see it in the way she held eye contact for a heartbeat too long before looking at the floor. You live alone? I asked before thinking. Her brow lifted slightly, not offended, more surprised. I asked. Yes. I didn't tell her I did too. Didn't tell her the silence of my own apartment did the same thing her eyes were doing now. Some truths don't need sound to exist. She reached for the tablet on the counter, skimming through my chart. Maybe to focus. Maybe to hide. But her voice was softer when she spoke again. You're 24. There was no judgment in the way she said it, but the number hung there like a reminder of things neither of us should be considering. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I watched the way her fingers traced the edge of the screen, slow and thoughtful. You thought I was younger? I asked. Her lips parted, then pressed together. She didn't admit anything, but she didn't deny it either. I've been doing this a long time, she said quietly. I try not to make assumptions. She walked toward me again, this time stopping closer than before. Her hand came to rest lightly on my shoulder, meant to guide me into turning slightly so she could check alignment, but her fingers stayed longer than any medical reason could justify. The warmth of her palm bled through the thin fabric of my shirt. I didn't move. Didn't even blink. Her thumb shifted, barely, but I felt it like a pulse. You should ice it tonight, she murmured, her breath too close to the side of my neck. And avoid heavy lifting for a few days. I swallowed. You always this hands-on with patients? That made her still, but she didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly before she let go. Only when they don't listen, she said, but her voice came out lower than intended. She stepped back, but not far. The space she put between us wasn't enough to cool anything. I watched the way her chest rose a little deeper than before, like she had to remind herself to breathe properly. The fluorescent lights above us hummed faintly. Somewhere down the hall, a cart rolled past. The world kept going, but the air in the room stayed thick. She reached for the door, hand on the handle, but didn't open it yet. Instead, she glanced back, not at my face, but at my hands, then up slowly. I'll come back in a minute to wrap the shoulder, she said. But she didn't leave. Not right away. Her fingers stayed on the handle, knuckles resting against the metal, as if something in her waited for permission she didn't actually need. I didn't give her words, just a look. She understood. And for a moment, neither of us pretended not to. The door finally opened, but not because she chose to walk out. Someone on the other side pushed it halfway before stopping short. A younger nurse, maybe late 20s, peered in with a clipboard pressed to her chest. Oh, sorry. I thought the room was empty. Elena didn't move from where she stood, just shifted her body slightly, as if shielding the view of me without making it obvious. Her hand lifted casually to the edge of the door, fingers resting on the wood. It's occupied, she said evenly. I'll be done soon. The other nurse hesitated a second too long, eyes sliding past her before retreating. The door shut again, but the interruption ripped the air open in a way neither of us acknowledged out loud. I watched her hand stay on the door even after the click. Her shoulders held tension she didn't try to hide. When she let go, she didn't turn around fully, only enough to look at me over her shoulder. "You should lie back again," she said, but her tone didn't match the instruction. I stayed seated, legs dangling off the edge of the exam table. She waited for compliance that didn't come, then exhaled, quiet but long, and took a step closer. Her hair had loosened near her neck, a wisp brushing her collarbone. I caught myself staring and forced my gaze up, but she'd already seen. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition or warning, hard to tell. She picked up the bandage roll from the counter and moved behind me. The sound of the fabric unraveling was too soft in the quiet room. "Lift your arm," she said, and her voice dipped lower than she meant it to. I raised it slowly, and her hand came around my back to guide the wrap across my shoulder. Her fingers brushed my skin just under the sleeve of my shirt, accidental, except neither of us adjusted to avoid it. Her breath was near my ear. I could hear it more than feel it, and that was somehow worse. "You're tense again," she murmured. "Maybe you're bad at relaxing people," I said. The silence after that was a beat too long. I could feel rather than see her lips part, like she almost answered, almost joked back. But she didn't. She wrapped the bandage around the front of my shoulder, her palm flattening it into place. The back of her hand grazed my chest, barely, but enough that she noticed it too. Her breath hitched, then steadied. "You know this is complicated," she said quietly, eyes still on the bandage. I didn't pretend not to understand. "Only if someone looks too closely." She paused, hand still resting against me. "They do. People always do." I turned my head slightly, just enough that her face was inches from mine. She didn't step back. The smell of her skin, something warm and clean beneath the faint sweetness, was too real to ignore. Her eyes dropped to my mouth for the briefest second, quick, instinctive, wrong, true. She caught herself and pulled her hand away, fingers curling into her palm as if she'd touched fire. "You should go after this," she said softly. "Before someone comes back." But she still stood close. Close enough that if I leaned forward an inch, my forehead would brush hers. Close enough that I could see the faint pulse in her throat. "Elena," I said, just to see if she'd react. She did. Her gaze shot up, full of things she wasn't allowed to voice, not here, not like this. I didn't move. She didn't either. A distant voice called her name from the hallway. She flinched, not outwardly, just in the stillness of her shoulders. "I need to," she started, but the sentence didn't arrive. I reached for the edge of the bandage where her hand had just been, brushing the spot lightly. Not enough to pull her in. Enough to keep her there. She swallowed. Slow. Uncertain. Wanting. Another call of her name, closer now. She stepped back a fraction, but her eyes didn't leave mine. "We're not finished," she said. And even though the door separated us from the hallway, something about her voice made it feel like she wasn't talking about the bandage. The moment she stepped out, silence followed her like a shadow that didn't want to let go. I could still feel her hands on me, the faint warmth where her fingers had rested. The bandage held my shoulder, but it wasn't what kept me from leaving. 5 minutes passed. Then another. I should have walked out. I didn't. When the door opened again, she didn't expect me to still be there. The surprise flashed across her face before she hid it, but not quickly enough. "You didn't check out at the desk," she said quietly, closing the door behind her. I wasn't done. She locked it. Automatically. Then froze when she realized what she'd done. The soft click sounded louder than anything else in the room. "Elena," I said, and the way her name left my mouth made her look up. Her hair had come loose more than before, the twist falling at the nape of her neck. A few strands clung to her cheek. She didn't reach to fix it. "You can't stay," she murmured, but she didn't tell me to leave. I stood from the exam table. Her eyes followed the movement, then dropped, throat, chest, hands, before she brought them back up like she hadn't. She moved to the counter, pretending to check something on the chart. Her fingers tapped the screen, steady at first, then not. I stepped closer. Not enough to touch. Enough to change the air. She felt it. You don't understand what this could do, she said, still facing away. Then explain it. She turned slowly, leaning back against the counter like she needed something solid at her spine. Her arms crossed, but not in defense. More like she was holding herself together. You're 24. I'm not, she said, voice low, eyes steady. People talk. They assume. They judge. Does it bother you? Yes, she said instantly. Then, softer, because it should. I took another step. Her breath caught, subtle but there. You're assuming this is all on you, I said. It is, she replied. If someone walks in like before, they didn't see anything. They didn't have to. I moved closer until the counter pressed into the backs of her hips. Her chest rose and fell a little too slow, like she had to remember how to breathe. You keep saying what shouldn't happen, I said. But you haven't stepped away once. Her jaw tensed. Don't twist this. I'm not twisting anything. I reached up slowly, giving her time to stop me. She didn't. My fingers lifted the loose strand of hair from her cheek. It was soft, lighter than it looked. I tucked it gently behind her ear, and she closed her eyes for half a second too long. When they opened again, they didn't look guarded. They looked cornered by something she wanted and couldn't name. This can't go further, she whispered. It already has. She didn't deny it this time. Her hand came up, hesitant, trembling just enough to betray her, and rested against my chest. My heartbeat met her palm. She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for hours. I've spent years keeping distance, she said. You make it feel like there's no space to keep. I leaned in just enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath at the edge of my mouth. Not touching. Close enough that a single thought could erase the gap. Tell me you don't want this, I said quietly. Her fingers curled against my shirt. She didn't speak. My nose brushed the curve of her cheek, and she shivered, not from cold. My hand moved to her waist, slow, deliberate, giving her every chance to push me off. She didn't. Then, 3 sharp knocks at the door. Her eyes flew wide. My forehead was still almost touching hers. Her hand stayed on my chest. Elena, a voice called from the hallway. You in there? The knocks didn't come again, but the voice outside waited for an answer. Elena stayed frozen for a breath too long, my hand still at her waist, her fingers still curled against my chest. She stepped back, but not cleanly. Her hip brushed mine before she moved past, and her hand grazed my arm as if she forgot to pull it away. She unlocked the door but didn't open it yet. Her breathing hadn't settled. I'll be out in a second, she called, voice steady but too controlled. A muffled reply came through the door, then fading footsteps. She let out a quiet breath she didn't want me to hear. When she turned back, she didn't meet my eyes right away. She went to the small sink, ran the water, then shut it off without actually using it. Her hands braced on the metal counter. Her shoulders rose slowly, then fell. Elena, I said. She didn't look up. You shouldn't use my name like that. Why? Because it sounds like I know you? No, she said, finally turning. Because it sounds like you want to. The honesty slipped out of her before she could bury it again. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was charged. And then she added something I didn't expect. And I don't know how to stop wanting you to. My pulse jumped. She realized what she'd said only after the words left her. She swallowed once, slowly, like she could take them back if she moved carefully enough. I stepped closer, not touching her yet. You think I don't feel the same? Her jaw tightened. It doesn't matter what you feel. Then why did you lock the door? She flinched, not visibly, but in that pause between breaths where truth usually hides. She didn't answer. I closed the last of the distance. Not fully, just enough that she could feel heat again. Her arm brushed my ribs when she turned slightly, as if she meant to move away but forgot where the edge of her own body was. "There's something else," she said suddenly. I waited. She hesitated, then met my eyes. "That nurse who walked in earlier, she's the reason I stopped going to the gym." She wasn't just a coworker. She was someone I trusted. Someone who talked about me more than she should have. Understanding clicked into place. Rumors. Assumptions. Quiet humiliation that never fully died. "Elena," I said softer now. "You think she already has," she cut in. "Not about you. But about others. About anything that gives people something to whisper about." Her arms folded, but not defensively, more like she needed to hold herself together. I could see it in the way her hands pressed into her elbows. My voice dropped. "You think she'd come after you for this?" "I think she'd enjoy it if she did." The way she said it, the mix of shame and something darker, made my chest tighten. I reached for her wrist before thinking it through. She didn't pull away. Her pulse beat soft and fast beneath my thumb. "You're scared of her," I said. "No," she replied, but there was no strength in the denial. "I'm scared of what I'd lose." "And you think I'm not?" My voice came out low, closer than I realized. She looked up sharply then, really seeing me. The fear between us shifted, no longer one-sided. Something in her face softened, then broke just enough to show the truth through it. Before she could speak, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She stiffened, reached for it, checked the screen, then went still. The name glowing there wasn't mine. It wasn't family. It wasn't neutral. She turned the phone face down on the counter. I waited. She didn't explain. But the tension in her jaw said everything. History was still watching her. I stepped in again, close enough that the edge of the counter pressed into her back. My hand found the side of her waist this time, slow, sure, no hiding. She didn't move. "We're past pretending," I said quietly. Her breath left her, but her body didn't pull away. And for the first time, she didn't tell me to stop. She didn't speak, but she didn't move away either. My hand was still at her waist, and the counter at her back kept her from stepping out of reach. The phone buzzed once more where she'd placed it face down, but neither of us looked at it this time. "Elena," I said softly. Her eyes lifted to mine, and I saw it, panic, longing, restraint stretched thin. She wasn't pretending anymore. She couldn't. Not with the way her breath kept catching, or how her fingers had curled around the edge of the counter like she needed something solid to hold on to. "You know this doesn't end clean," she whispered. "It doesn't have to end at all." A shaky laugh escaped her. "You're too young to say things like that. And you're too careful to admit you want me to." Her lips parted, but no reply came. The silence between us thickened until it was almost its own heat. I moved closer, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted to, but she didn't. My chest nearly grazed hers, our faces close enough that I could feel the warmth of each breath she released. "Look at me," I murmured. She did. And I knew in that moment, in the way her eyes searched mine, in the way she didn't blink, that she'd been holding herself back for far longer than just today. Her voice was quiet. "We could ruin each other. Or we don't walk away," I said. "And let it ruin us anyway." Her composure cracked then. Just a flicker, but real. Her shoulders softened, and that guarded distance she wore like armor slipped an inch too far out of place. When I lifted my hand to her jaw, my fingers barely touching her skin, she didn't turn away. I brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, slow and deliberate. She closed her eyes for just a second, long enough to betray how badly she wanted the touch she kept talking herself out of. "I'm scared of wanting this," she whispered. "I already do," I answered. Her eyes opened again, and something behind them gave in. I leaned in, not kissing her, but close enough that my forehead nearly touched hers. Her breath skimmed my lips. The smell of her, clean, warm, faintly floral, made it hard to think about consequences or caution or whoever was waiting outside that door. Say no, I told her quietly. If you mean it, say it. She didn't. Instead, her hand lifted slowly, fingers brushing my wrist first, tentative, unsure, before sliding higher to rest against my chest. Her touch wasn't hesitant anymore. It was grounding, claiming. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a breath. I'm so tired of pretending I don't feel this. That was it, the choice, spoken without fanfare. I closed the last inch between us. Not a kiss yet, but everything in our bodies leaned into the inevitability of it. My palm spread across the small of her back. She rose slightly onto her toes, closing the height between us without thinking. The air locked. Her fingertips pressed into me like she needed the confirmation that this, whatever it was real. I rested my forehead against hers. Then don't pretend anymore. She didn't flinch. She didn't retreat. Her hand moved to the side of my neck, her thumb brushing my pulse as though she was checking the truth of what she'd just decided. And finally, she breathed the words that ended whatever distance we had left. I'm not walking away. There was no confusion now. No denial. No unfinished sentence hanging between us. Only the certainty that, from this point on, neither of us could go back to pretending we didn't already belong to the moment we'd just chosen. ChatGPT said, her words still hung in the air, unpolished, brave, irreversible. I'm not walking away. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. It would have been too much, too fast, and somehow not enough. Instead, I let the silence hold our decision, let it settle between us like something sacred instead of reckless. My hand stayed at her lower back, and hers remained against my neck, her thumb brushing a slow, calming path across my skin. Neither of us needed to say what we both knew, that whatever came next wouldn't be easy, but pretending nothing was happening had already cost us more than the risk ever could. She was the first to move, but not away. Elena shifted just slightly, closing the space so her body rested against mine, her forehead leaning into my shoulder. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. It was quiet, the kind of closeness that didn't need to ask permission anymore. You're still shaking, I murmured, my hand tracing the curve of her spine. So are you, she said softly. I almost laughed. Yeah. I guess I am. She let out a breath that might have been a laugh too, except it ended in something softer. I didn't try to fill the quiet. I just stood there with her, breathing her in, grounding her while she did the same for me. After a moment, her fingers slid from my neck to my shoulder, then down my arm until they found my hand. She laced her fingers through mine, not in a hesitant way, but like she'd decided she was done pretending her hands didn't know where they wanted to rest. Her voice was low. I don't know what happens after this. Neither do I admitted. But we'll deal with it. Together. She tipped her head back just enough to meet my eyes. There was vulnerability there, yes, but also a steadiness I hadn't seen in her before, like admitting she wanted me hadn't broken her at all, but released something that had been straining to breathe. You make it sound simple, she said. It doesn't have to be complicated to be real. She held my gaze for a long moment, like she was testing that thought from every angle. Then she smiled, soft, tired, unguarded. You're too young to talk like that, she said again, but this time there was no accusation in it. No shame. Just affection wrapped in truth. And you're too incredible to keep pretending you don't deserve it, I replied. She didn't argue. For a while, we didn't move. My thumb traced idle circles on the back of her hand, her other hand settled lightly against my chest like it had always belonged there. No one knocked. No phone buzzed again. The world outside the room could have just disappeared. Eventually, she rested her head against me again, her cheek near my collarbone. I pressed a slow kiss to the top of her hair, not urgent, not asking for more. Just being there. Just choosing her. She didn't speak, but she exhaled into me, and everything unspoken between us finally stopped trying to claw its way out. When she did whisper, it was quiet enough that I felt it more than heard it. I don't want to regret this. You won't, I said gently. We won't. Her fingers squeezed mine, and she nodded once, the motion brushing her hair across my jaw. That small, simple movement, her choosing closeness instead of distance, felt like the real beginning. No more pretending. No more pulling away before anyone could notice. Just us. And the truth we'd already stepped into. I pressed my forehead to hers again, my hand still steady at her back. We figure it out from here, I said. And we don't walk away, she finished. There wasn't anything left to question after that.